Y'all, first and foremost, want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and his son, the Mashiach, who some call Yahweh Shai, Yeshua, Yehoshua. We mostly know as Jesus Christ. I want to talk briefly. It's in the during the time of the Feast of Dedication, Hanukkah. And there's a lot of information that's missing from the Apocrypha, from the end of the Apocrypha to the time of Christ, to the Gospels, approximately about almost 200 years. There is a dynasty between there. You're stopping at where we had the Feast of Dedication and Hanukkah and you rededicating the temple, you're getting everybody back into Torah observance, and then boof, we wake up 150 years later, and we have this Idumean king over Israel. How did we get this? How did this happen? How did Herod become king of Israel? There are three different Herods. What part? What's their history? Where did they come from? Who married who, etc. What happened? I was given an example of, the Emancipation Proclamation was 1863, 69, something like that. Someone who came up in the 1850s got whipped on a plantation, got his back whipped into a coma, and then he wake up 200 years later, and it's some Negro saying that he's the president of the United States. He missed a lot of history. 200 years is a lot of time, and that's what we're missing in the text. Before we get to a point where we seeing Pharisees, Sadducees, we don't know where these folks came from. You have the Essenes, you have the Parthians. We don't know who the Parthians are, even though the Roman Parthian War, we don't know that relationship. We don't know the relationship between the Greeks and the Romans. We just think they just came together. That's pretty much the only history we know. Like, it's a lot to digest and to dissect from that. And I'm not here to give you all of that. No, most of us don't want to deal with all of that. I'm here to just summarize some stuff for you. And I'll put this article in the description. And from this article, you can continue all the way down through the Hasmonean dynasty, through these kings. Like, once a few years after the Feast of Dedication, we are having kings that are priests, okay, that are running and ruling Israel, and not only ruling Israel, but going out and conquering other nations and still defeating the Greeks, fighting off the Greeks continually, still, and then eventually allying with the Romans. So the Romans, because the Romans are dealing with fighting against the Greeks, and trying to use Israel for, it's a whole bunch of politics in there, and we don't understand the social climate, the political climate of Israel during the time of Christ, where we're mixing a lot of things up and have a lot of pre-notions, especially without understanding this history. And if somebody doesn't understand it, it's kind of hard for them to understand what's going on and how these doctrines are getting spread around, and why the Pharisees are saying what they saying, why the Sadducees are saying what they're saying, why is Christ saying what he's saying about these particular individuals. How did they get in certain power positions? Why are so many Jews scattered across all in Rome and Italy and Babylon? A lot of this stuff will be answered in this article, but again, we just gonna glean through it real quick, okay? Starting here, says the Hasmonean era is among the most glorious in Jewish history. A lot of you don't know what the Hasmonean era is, and it said, hey, it's one of the most glorious in Jewish history, but a lot of us don't know it. We just celebrate Hanukkah. Hey man, we rededicated the temple, which is a good thing. You're not saying, not talking negative about that, but that's just saying there's much more history that that we need to read about and to understand the New Testament. Yet contains seeds of self-destruction that almost destroyed everything. Many people are under the impression that after the miracle of Hanukkah, the war with the Greeks was over. Far from it. The miracle of Hanukkah actually occurred only in the third year of the war. All right, that's another thing you have to understand, that when you're reading about the Feast of Dedication and how the Maccabees fought off the Greeks, and how we couldn't keep Sabbaths and how we couldn't observe to be Jews, this only lasted for 3 years before we bucked and said, nah, you ain't finna keep doing that to us. And if you read the first 2 chapters, it gives you the dates. It gives you the dates, it gives you the years, and it's 3 years. If you read the first 2 chapters of Maccabees. After that, Judas Maccabees ends up, destroying the Greeks, fighting back, and going back and circumcising all the little ones that wasn't circumcised during this 3-year period. Okay. And that's also in the Apocalypse. It's in the Maccabees. I want to say First Maccabees 2:48. Let me see real quick. It's either First Maccabees 2:48 or Second Maccabees 2:48. Somewhere around there. Let me see. Hold on. Yes, around there. It's somewhere around there. It says, so they recovered the law out of the hand of the Gentiles and out of the kings, neither suffered they sinners to triumph. Keep reading from there. It's somewhere around that area. All right. When you're saying they recovered the law, they pretty much are going back to the law. This is in chapter 2. All right. This, it's in chapter 2 where we went back to the Torah. We not finna sit here and play with these folks. So in the 3rd year of the war, that's when the Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication, happened. After the Jews reconquered Jerusalem, rededicated the temple, and experienced the miracle of the little flask of oil that burned 8 days, the war dragged out another 5 to 7 years. Okay, dragged out another 5 to 7 years. Now, the little flask of oil, I think that's in the Talmud. You burning the manure 8 days. You're doing that because of this story in the Talmud. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's that history of that oil that kept burning to keep that manure lit. Anyway, at the time of the miracle, according to most historians, Mattisyahu, the father of the Hasmoneans, Maccabees, Johanan, the oldest brother, were dead. Okay. The year after the miracle, Judah the Maccabee, the 3rd brother, he died. They were killed in battle. 3 years after the miracle of Hanukkah, there was a major battle where the Greeks tried to reconquer the land of Israel. You'll see this in 1st and 2nd Maccabees. They tried to reconquer it. At that time, Eleazar was killed when an elephant he attacked and wounded fell on him. He had great zeal. He seen the elephant. He went out there to cut up on the elephant. The elephant ended up crushing him. That's in Maccabees. Okay. 5 years after the miracle of, now we got Jonathan Maccabee or Yohanan Maccabee. 5 years after the miracle of Hanukkah, the only 2 surviving Maccabees were Jonathan and Simon. Jonathan was appointed high priest, but he did not assume the mantle of kingship. Even though the Greeks were defeated militarily, they now tried to undermine the Jewish government through assassination plots and pitting Jew versus Jew. Okay, at this point, when Jonathan Maccabee and the Greeks, they pretty much realized that they can't beat these people. They can't beat us militarily, so they devise and bribe. Start bribing certain people, paying them brides to set them up to be a Judas. All right, to set up these public officials who, this was a king. This is a king / high priest. All right, and they're paying certain people to to give up his location, to set him up so they can kill him from the inside, and kill the shepherd, the sheep will flee. And so that's what they're trying to do. Jonathan was invited to a banquet by our people he trusted. There he was captured, turned over to the Greeks, and held for ransom, demanding the Jews to give up certain cities and allow Greeks to enter the Jerusalem to reestablish a foothold there. The Jews refused. Jonathan was publicly executed despite the efforts of his brother Simon to save him. There was only two Maccabees left, Simon and Jonathan. Jonathan ended up being that high priest, but they ended up being set up at this banquet, almost the same, almost Judas, set up at this banquet to be killed. He ended up getting captured. Simon, his brother, the younger brother tried to, do something to help to get him out, but to no avail. And Jonathan ended up getting executed publicly by the Greeks. Then came Simon. He was a great and righteous. It says Simon was now the last survivor of the family. He became the founder of what is now as the Hasmonean dynasty. Simon, a great righteous person, loved both by the people and rabbis. He set himself task of rebuilding the Jewish state, reinvigorating the Jewish people, throwing Greeks and Greek ideas out of the country, and destroying all of the idols. Okay, we weren't just that Hellenization for 2,200 years. That's not what happened. Anybody that's being Hellenized is because they want to be. And we'll see that the Sadducees were like a group of people that were trying to do that wanted to do that and try to get Israel to get on aboard that train also. So we see Simon here, one of the last remaining, and pretty much seemed to be the founder of the Hasmonean dynasty. He's throwing out Greek ideas out of the country and all of the idols. He set up the Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin was led by two people, Rabbi Joshua ben I don't know if he set up the Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin might have been before this, but the Sanhedrin was led by two people, Rabbi Joshua ben Akaiah and Natai Abila. And that's probably something from the Talmud. And then this is here some they trying to, again, this is a non-messianic source here. All right, from the little hats, and they try to throw little shots there, but you got to chew the meat, spit out the bones. Trying to throw shots there, saying that Christ was 100 years before the text actually say some garbage. A major historical mistake. Simon, they're dealing with Simon. Simon was not only the king, but after his brother Jonathan's death, he the high priest as well. Simon is being a king and a high priest. That became a little problematic. Because that's not, Torah. Those things supposed to be separated. Let's continue. The dual role signified a major historical change, not a positive one. The leading rabbis told him in a nice way that a king of Israel had to come from the tribe of Judah. The verse says the staff should not depart from Judah. Genesis 49:10. Besides the open verse, it was simply not good for a system of checks and balances to have both positions held by one person. All right, so that was a problem with that. Him being king, and they're trying to figure this thing out. But they're all ruling themselves, okay? We are under our own governance at this point, okay? We're just trying to figure it out. We got this Simon's the last Maccabee of this great lineage. He's king, but, he's also high priest, but he was going to make his brother high priest. He be king. And you'll see through this Hasmonean dynasty, that's kind of how they wanted to play it out. But even with that, it caused problems because you make one brother king, one brother high priest, and then they fighting for power. A lot of this stuff we imploded from the inside. Some other historical mistakes. Second historical mistake was he made an alliance with Rome. This is also in the Apocrypha and Maccabees, where he set out to write this treaty and gave Rome all of these victuals to, make this alliance with them. The up and coming empire. The Romans wanted a counterbalance against the Greeks, all right, to provide them a base for their legions in the Middle East. Indeed, they deployed the 10th Legion to Israel, which would be infamous for its anti-Semitism Semitism and cruelty, and was the primary army the Romans used to destroy the temple and slaughter the populace. All right. That was a mistake that Simon made, was to ally with Rome. Okay, and when you see the text, we kind of like a vassal state to Rome. Not at this point necessarily, but later Rome has to come in and help us with another problem, to settle us with another problem, keep us from killing each other, and kind of brought us into us being a vassal state. And this kind of brought in these other people being over us. Okay, indeed, they deployed. Okay, third historical mistake, which was not Simon's mistake, but his son, Yohanan Hyrcanus, was to conquer and convert the tribe of Idumeans, a tribe in the southland of Israel, by the point of a sword. Jewish law is very opposed to converting people by force. Those are not the type of converts Judaism is looking for. From those Idumeans will come Herod and a host of other troubles. All right. And so Simon's son, John Hyrcanus, who we finna get into next, he becomes king next after Simon is, we'll see what happens to Simon. But John Hyrcanus, his son, goes out. This is a problem. I don't know why they put it on the Simon, but John Hyrcanus converted these Edomites. They conquered the Edomites. They conquered a lot of the northern kingdom area. They reconquered that and repopulated and put Jews in those areas again. And this is how you see Nazareth and Galilee having Jews in it, which is a good ways from Jerusalem. You know, you got Galilee, then you got Samaria, and then you got Judah. But he repopulated those. He conquered all of those areas, repopulated even Samaria. John Hyrcanus is the one that knocked down the temple. You see the lady talking about the Samaritan woman saying, "Hey man, we used to worship up there." Yeah, they used to, until John Hyrcanus went up there, conquered Samaria, put them under tax, and knocked down that temple that they was up there worshiping at. And this is why you had the beef, but you don't understand the beef because you don't know what happened in between this. You don't know that Jews went in there and defeated and conquered Samaria. And now it's big beef, and then they made an alliance to protect them. Like, no, you ain't coming through here. You know, but it's not the beef from the split. It's deeper than that. Being that, you know, we literally went out here trying to slaughter these folks and destroyed the temple that they used to worship at. Where we was at, he would reign. John Hyrcanus. Let's talk about him. This is what we was trying to talk about. But Simon was assassinated by a son-in-law who was bribed by the Syrian Greek leaders. Okay, Simon was assassinated. John Hyrcanus' father, he was assassinated. You know, again, we had one. You know, Simon's brother Jonathan. He ended up getting traded on, and jokers invited him to a banquet, and he ended up putting him in prison. And then his brother Simon ended up getting assassinated. Okay, and they had groups of Jews that, you know, were paid off by the Greeks. They were traitors to their country. They were Judases, and they did the same thing. They're playing out and they're doing the same thing. They like, hey, yeah, man, this worked before. We'll find somebody to do it. No big deal. He was assassinated by a son-in-law. Okay, a son-in-law. All right, not really his son, but a son-in-law. All right, and he was bribed by Syrian Greek leaders. Man, it's crazy. His oldest son, John Hyrcanus, a fierce warrior, immediately rushed to Jerusalem and installed himself in his father's place as both the high priest and king. Then he rallied the Sanhedrin and the people to his side, rescued his mother, who had been held for ransom, and forced his murderous brother-in-law to flee. Okay, he also rescued his mother. Also, brother-in-law also had his mother that caused his mother to be captured. He would reign for a very long time and die in his bed, which was a major accomplishment in those days. He achieved some great things, but left a very mixed legacy. On the positive side, he helped strengthen the Torah education system in the land. Was personally Scopolis. Y'all give me grace on that. In his observance of the Jewish law, and raised the bar regarding service in the temple. He even improved the temple edifice at great expense. In addition, he threw out the Greeks and kept the Romans pinned around Caesarea. All right, that's where Cornelius is from. All right, why are the Romans pinned around Caesarea? Why are they pinned around? Who is Caesarea? Why is it named after Greek? Anyway, he threw the Greeks out and kept the Romans around pinned around Caesarea. He took over vast areas, what is today Jordan, and repopulated the Golan with Jews. Okay, he repopulated the Golan with Jews. He pushed the border of Israel all the way to the outskirts of Damascus. He also took the seaport of Jaffa or Joppa. The Jews became partners with the Phoenicians in shipping and trading. All right, Jews became partners with the Phoenicians. You wondering why the Syrian Phoenician woman is around? A lot of trading and stuff was going on. We had relationships with these people. That is when Jews began to move to North Africa to establish trade routes. You had Alexandria, Egypt, Libya. These places were good for trading on the Mediterranean Sea. Jews also reached Italy and Rome. You see that in Acts chapter 2, where you having all of these Jews coming from Italy, coming from Rome, coming from Babylon, coming from all of these different places to the four corners of the earth. They coming from because we had repopulated certain areas, and then we went and populated other areas because we were trading and getting to this bread and making money. This is how Paul's having Roman citizenship, and his partner having land, out there in Rome. Under his reign, a large immigration of Jews immigrated from Babylon. In short, he brought the country prosperity and greatness. John Hyrcanus was the worthy successor to his father. Only in his last few years of his reign, to understand where he went wrong, we must reaccount the emergence of a new group of wayward Jews, the Sadducees. Okay, his last few years came this group of Sadducees. Why? Because of the prosperity and the wealth that is going on, and all of us doing all of this trading and kicking the bobo, and a lot of these jokers getting in high places, making these bribes. I would speculate that it was Sadducees that were setting up Simeon and Simon and Jonathan to be killed, that were taking them bribes. And you see the same thing with the Pharisees and Sadducees are coming together. Like, how are we going to kill this joker? Because we need to put ourselves in some kind of position. One of the great Torah leaders in the early origin of the Sadducees. One of the great Torah leaders in the early days of the Second Temple was Antigonus of Soko. He was wont to say, do not be like servants who serve God on the condition of receiving a reward. Rather be like servants who serve God without expecting a reward. All right, they saying that Antigonus was this great leader in Israel, and he had this saying, don't do not be like servants who serve. Don't serve God like you're going to receive a reward, but serve him like, you know, you have no expectation of receiving a reward. The Sadducees done took this philosophy and interpreted it, and they put their own little spin on it. Antigonus had two followers named Zadok and Bothus, who interpreted his words as meaning that there was no reward or punishment or no world to come. They spent it into like, oh, well, ain't no punishment, ain't no world to come. You know, kick the bobo, do it, you know, do as thou wilt, be it, you know, just go out here and live it up. All right. If you do God's will, fine. If you do not, nothing bad will happen to you. God does not reward or punish. And we seen that Christ used this against the Sadducees and the Pharisees, understanding that one believed in eternal life and the other one didn't. Sadducees didn't believe in angels and all of that stuff in the afterworld. They didn't believe in that. You hear and then you die. Pharisees did believe in that, because the Pharisees they dealt with the text. Sadducees not so much. The Sadducees were pretty much Hellenists. That was also a basic idea of Hellenism. Events happen at random. There was no reward or punishment. What you did made no difference as long in the long run. Eat, drink, be married. Tomorrow we die. Because what is the difference? Third party platform. It was one thing to have those ideas, but another thing to initiate a whole movement based on the ideas and call it Judaism. The followers became known as Sadducees after Zadok, or Botheism after Bothus. The three planks, I had to look into that. Botheisms, Botheisms. Y'all have grace with me. Sadducees after Zadok and Botheisms after Bothus. I had to look into that. Look into the Bothus. I'm not familiar with that, but you know, of course, we're familiar with the Pharisees. The three planks of their third party platform were no life after hereafter, no reward or punishment. There is no such thing as oral tradition. The priestly class is the ruling class. That's what the Sadducees felt. That was their foundational principles. All right, there is no reward after no reward or punishment. There ain't no oral traditions. You ain't finna throw that on us. And ain't no and the priest gotta run things. All right. The second thing they said was that there was no such thing as oral tradition. It was an invention of the rabbis. Every generation had the right to interpret it, all right, or to reinterpret it. Basically, we can reinterpret the Torah how we want to reinterpret. We ain't got to just listen to y'all passing this stuff down. Why should we trust y'all? Why we trusting y'all and what y'all passing? Why we trust you? You know, we every generation we should have an opportunity to do that. Of course, it was a catch-22 if they could throw what their predecessors had held sacred, then those after them could do the same with their interpretations, which is what will happen. From Christianity onward, the written Torah will become most reinterpreted and at the same time misinterpreted books in history. Again, I've told you this is a non-messianic source. Christianity itself would spawn countless factions, each claiming to possess the gospel truth, the divine interpretation. Islam would also come along and claim that they have triumphed the Christians, possessing the true interpretation. The Sadducees started a whole domino effect of human interpretation, which took the meaning of the text away from its divine origin. They had an agenda in doing so, undermining the authority of Torah, undermining the authority of Torah sages and the Sanhedrin to fit in with the next ideological plank, which was to control the government, that the control of the government should lie in the hands of the Sanhedrin. They were pretty much like Catholics, you know, and that the priest could be a pope kind of figure, and the priest should control everything. The priest should control the government. And this that's what I'm saying. Is understanding this history, understand where they getting this stuff from. And that's they probably gleaned a lot of this stuff from the Sadducees. Like I wanna, you know, once I get off of here, try to make that connection. Did the Catholics really just follow the Sadducees? How much influence did the Sadducees have on Catholicism? You know, just to look at it. Maybe it's something there. I don't know. but I dig in it. That's how I research. That's how I try to find certain things out. That's how my brain works. Basically, the Sanhedrin was democratic because Torah is democratic. One does not require a pedigree to be a scholar. Respect for the Torah is not dependent upon wealth or status. In fact, the Talmud says, "Be careful regarding the poor, because from the Torah will from them shall the Torah emerge." Torah comes from the humble class. Torah is egalitarian. It is open for anyone who wants it bad enough. Some of the greatest scholars in Jewish history were converts and people living well below poverty level. The sages of Israel were not born with the golden spoon in their mouths. I remember Old Testament brother was telling me, man, well, this is what the sages. I said, well, I don't believe in the sages. It's another thing. The turning of John Hyrcanus. During the reign of John Hyrcanus, the Sadducees became strong, and he helped strengthen them. He believed that he was so great and his faith so strong that he was above influence. All right, these people began, influencing John Hyrcanus. Even though he was getting people back to Torah and so forth, he thought he could, he can control them. Yeah, I see what they're doing, but let me just keep them close because, I might can use them some kind of way. They ain't gonna let them influence me. I'm too smart for that, but they end up working on him. All right, they end up working on him, and he end up leaning their way a little bit towards the end. The beginnings of a century of internal conflict. Let me see something here we may have missed. Let me just read this and then we'll end out. We ain't got but a couple more paragraphs here. It says the Sadducees worked on him. They told him that the Torah sages were out to get him. All right. That they did not think he should be king. All right. And they start throwing in that doubt. Well, the sages. And the sages were the Pharisees. That's where the Pharisees come from. The sages were the Pharisees. They were the ones writing these things down, in the Sanhedrin, passing down this oral tradition. The Sadducees, like, nah, man, we don't need that foolishness, man. The priests. So the Sadducees were the priests. The Pharisees were the sages. The scribes. Those passing down the Torah history, those the teachers of the Torah. Where we was at, that they do not think he should be king, that they would not let his son reign and so forth. They plotting against you, man. Them Pharisees, they really want to take over. He listened because he thought it would not affect him, and meanwhile he would use the opportunity to inspire them toward his point of view. The Talmud records the key incident that changed him. He threw a banquet where members of the Sanhedrin were in attendance. One of them accused him of being illegitimate. That his mother had been raped when she was in captivity for a short period. Man, we be saying the same stuff. Man, how you're Israelite, man? We went in captivity. You know what I'm saying? But that brief little stint where his mother was was captured, man, your mother got raped, man. Or it had to be some other stint. It had to be some other stint. Simon. Well, no, that's not Simon. Yeah. So when she was locked up, no, that was Simon's mother. So it had to be something. Like I said, we ain't got all the details, but some point his mother was captured, and she was raped. That's what they're saying. And evidently the captivity was a short period. Furious, he demanded an inquiry. The rabbis revealed, plus his Talmud. So who would take it with a grain of salt. The rabbis reviewed the details and cleared his mother. He was legitimate. However, from the point onward, John Hyrcanus heard the echo of the poisons that the Sadducees had fed him. A lot of this stuff too is coming from Josephus, and some of the Greek historians. All the years of good feeling between him and the sages of the Sanhedrin began to wane. Little by little, suspicion replaced trust. Beginning of a century of internal conflict. This was the beginning of the conflict between the Sadducees and the Pharisees. The Sadducees were the Torah sages, the traditional Jews. The Hebrew word for Pharisee is parashim, means to separate, because they separated themselves from the Hellenists and all outside influences. They attempted to remain in the pristine, unique state of Judaism. Later, Christian Gospels would paint some negative images of Pharisees, which would become embedded in Western and world culture. However, they were great leaders of Israel, and I kind of agree with that. We do paint a bad image on the Pharisees. The Pharisees are coming in, they telling people that, telling these, Gentile converts that they have to get circumcised in order to be saved. And that was according to Torah. They did need to do that according to Torah. Now, Acts 15, the Jerusalem Council through the Spirit, the apostles, made a decision and said that they don't have to be circumcised. But the Pharisees aren't trying to be evil. They just going according to what was, just like you have if a stranger wanted to keep Passover, they would have to be, they would need to be circumcised. You want to come under this covenant, you have to be circumcised. That was something that's taught in the Torah, but we see they had that great council in Acts 15 discussing that great point. And then you see Paul going in to the Galatians who have deceived you and told you about. And when he's talking about the law, he's talking about that circumcision. Why are y'all doing that? Like, did you receive this thing? Did you receive the Holy Spirit? Did you receive that when you were circumcised? Did the flesh give you that? You have that whole dialogue there. But the Pharisees, but we paint them bad because of how they operating. But it's also the influence again, because Christ is there, the Messiah is there, he the king. They would side with their enemies to try to plot to take him out. So yeah, we give him a negative viewpoint from that aspect of, y'all trying to kill Christ. You know what I'm saying? But outside of that, they were kind of upright. But they were hypocrites. Also, Christ points out that they were major hypocrites. They looked the part, but they really weren't. Upright individuals. Which become embedded in the Western, but just knowing their intentions. However, there were great leaders in Israel. Hillel, Rabbi Akiva, and others, and even more in the non-Jewish world, recognized as the epitome of benevolent, sagely people were Pharisees through and through. And this is a Pharisee writing this. These are Pharisees writing these articles, so they're gonna feel that way. In addition, Josephus and others point out how the majority of Jews sided with the Pharisees, about 80% of them. However, the Sadducees were a very powerful minority. They were part of the wealthy aristocratic class and strategically placed in the government. Why? Because they were Hellenists. They pretty much worked. They were pretty much spies for the Greeks, spies for the Romans, spies for whoever's in power that's paying that bread, that's gonna allow them to continue to trade in these certain areas and keep them in certain power. All right, they wanted to be, in these rulership. They wanted to be in rulership. They also dominated the temple and served as its priests. In short, they held a disproportionate amount of power. The situation would lead to an all-out war between Jewish factions, a very uncivil civil war. It would be a political, religious struggle conflict that would last 100 years and generate enough enmity to tear apart the Jewish state from the inside in ways the enemies could not. We end up destroying ourselves. The Sadducees and the Pharisees were fighting to death. And what we're going to end up seeing, y'all willing, we continue on. See, next week, you go to the next post, and this is what I'm saying. I'm gonna put this link this article in the description box, and you want to go ahead and you want to continue to read on. Maybe I get to it. Y'all willing, I will. But sometimes I forget and go to something else. I have read the next 3-4 articles, but they're going to the Sadducees and the Pharisees, and it continues on with the Hasmonean dynasty. We still got about 7 to 8 more kings, even a queen. We have even a queen ruling over Israel within before we get to the time of Christ. And a lot of these kings are siding. One king may side with the Sadducees, and then the next king that comes in ends up destroying and killing off some Sadducees and getting that king up out of there, and then that next king is dealing with the Pharisees. And so this beef is continuing to the times of Christ until ultimately Rome has to step in, and they end up, throwing somebody in here to be over us to try to calm the situation down. But we'll get into all of that. We just continue to read. We pray this thing was edifying. We'll wrap this one up. Pray this thing was edifying. Y'all be blessed. Shalom.